Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back on the 67 427 Galaxie. We finally got the radiator back and the heater core back from repair. Had to totally recore the radiator, save the tank sides and the tops so it looks like the original radiator, which is the proper way to do it. You have the part numbers on the sides, you have on the top the tanks where they say FOMOCO, so they all look right. I always also like to try to repair the original heater cores if possible. You can buy new, come from China, like everything else, made out of aluminum, plastic side tanks. Not a fan of any of that. If I get a decent one to work with that can be repaired, thankfully this one was, I'd rather use it than the reproductions that are out there. Now there are still some copper or brass ones out there. If I can find those, great. I've even found old, new old reserve stock ones that I've used. Works out great. But just stay away from the aluminum and the plastic side tank ones. They won't last very long. Here we have the heater core, and I put the foam sides and back on by using this 3M spray adhesive Super 77. Does a great job of adhering those parts to the heater cores. After getting the exhaust manifolds back from sandblasting, I'm going to apply this Eastwood high temp coating. If I remember correctly, reading the directions says to apply several thin coats. Well, as usual, I ignore the directions, and I found it best to use about a 1-inch wide brush and apply a first coat on really liberally. Get a nice thick coat on there to get down in the pores of the cast iron and soak in really well. Stuff dries pretty quick, so I'm able to flip it over and do the other side pretty much right away. Give it a few minutes then all to flash off and dry a bit. Then I'll flip it back over and do the top side one more time on both exhaust manifolds, and then flip them over again and do the back side, and they are ready to install. Now with everything all dry on the exhaust manifolds, we're ready to install them. You saw me lay out the hardware I use, the bolts with washers and the lock tabs, which are specially made for these exhaust manifolds and critical to use. If you don't use them, those bolts are going to loosen right back up. They are not easy to install, but you just take your time and you work through it. On this side, I'm really not doing it the right way. I should have installed the bottom bolts first and dropped the manifold on, and then swing the lock tabs up and tighten everything down, but I've learned my lesson on this side to not do that for the other side. With everything tightened up, I'm going to start bending over the little tabs to help lock the bolts into position. Moving on to the other side, I'm going to take my advice from what I suggested earlier and do it the right way. Install the bolts first, swing up the lock tabs into position, and then put the bolts on the top side. Makes it way easier to do the installation. And this side is much tighter clearance-wise than the other side was. As tightening as you'll see as I tighten it up, you can barely get a wrench in there to get these bolts tightened. Yeah, there's plenty of room to get in there. Not really. Imagine doing this job with the engine in the car. Finish tightening all the bolts, and once again, knock all the lock tabs over to keep the bolts in place. Time to install a dipstick tube, a little silicone sealant around it, and a few taps with a screwdriver to lock it down into place. On this engine, I'm using a Carter street strip pump, available from Jegs and Summit. When you call, don't forget to ask for the My Dirty Garage discount. You can ask, but probably won't get one because there is no such thing. And they have no idea who I am. With these pumps, it's necessary to clock the bottom section in order to have it line up properly with the fuel filter canister while still using the factory reproduction 3/8 fuel line. So, I'm going to take it apart. Thankfully, they've moved to using Torx screws instead of the old screwdriver Phillips head type, which strip every time you go to take them apart. With the fuel pump clocked correctly, I check it on the engine, make sure we're good, and we are. I'll finish installing and snugging down all the screws, and then it's time to get the gasket set up on the pump and get it ready for install. I like to use a 3M weather strip adhesive on the gasket, just a little bit, to glue it to the pump. Keeps it sealed and stops it from moving. Then a fine thin bead of, I like to use gray RTV silicone sealant to go right around the gasket. A dab of Molly on the end of the pump, and we're ready to install. After tightening, always make sure to wipe off any silicone that's squeezed out between the gasket and the mating surface. Makes it look a little cleaner. This is the point where I'll stop. Now I need to get some bolts for the engine. I need bolts for the flywheel, bolting it to the crank, for the clutch, the bolt to the flywheel, the bell housing, the bolt to the engine. Need motor mount bolts. I need correct motor mounts as well. Not an easy thing for side oil 427s. I'm probably going to have to modify the ones that I get, and I'll show you how I do it to make it all work. You probably noticed in the beginning of the video I picked up the radiator heater core. You saw me install the heater core. That shop has been there for, I think you'd said 47 years. Not many of those shops left anymore. Matter of fact, that is the only one I know of in my area. It used to be you'd have your choice of 3-4 radiator shops in the area. Nope, he's the last guy. Pretty much the same thing goes for alternators, starters. You used to be able to have a couple shops in the area where if you had an alternator starter needed to be rebuilt, it'd be easy. Run it over there, get it done. Probably do it for you right there while you stand. That's what it used to do for me. And you take it back with you and you're good to go. Those shops are all gone. I do not know of one small alternator starter shop left in my area. All these small little niche businesses they used to service these cars are gone. Mainly because it's sadly gotten cheaper to replace the parts than it has to rebuild them, which creates a problem for the guys like me who restore these cars. You're looking for the original parts. You need to get the original parts rebuilt. If there's nobody out there who rebuilds them, who you turn to? You saw with the master cylinder and the power brake booster. I had to send those out. Power brake booster went across the country to the other side. The power brake master cylinder, a little closer down to Virginia, but still, you get the idea. It's not easy to find these places to fix things anymore. And I guess it's kind of a symptom in this country. We, instead of fixing, we throw it away. I need to have a drive shaft built, which fortunately I got a shop in the area who does excellent work. They've been around for a very long time. Hopefully they'll remain. So we'll get that rebuilt. I'll probably have to source a couple parts for that because, again, it's old stuff. They don't carry it either. So they're always saying, well, you got to bring me this, bring me that. Usually a yoke, sometimes U-joints, and whatever. We get it done. So that'll do it. And I want to thank you once again. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the channel.